All right, Ty Salvant, we are here again today having a classroom conversation with the Teach Your Own Kid brand. So I just want to thank you again, Ty Salvant of NOLA Homeschoolers, for joining me today. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well, and you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. These conversations are helping families. I just
Yes.
They are helping families. We've been able to put these conversations on YouTube, share them on Facebook. You've been able to share them in the NOLA Homeschoolers Facebook group. And parents are responding. They're thanking you for bringing the information to the table. Right. So I want to thank you
You're
personally.
welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad to be able to be here and to assist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in our last classroom conversation, we talked about homeschooling, right? Because many of our families are in that position right now in the middle of the pandemic. Some of the tips necessary to successfully homeschool our little ones, the 1 to 4 year olds, right? Those babies that require a lot of our attention. But at the same time, that is a critical age, right?
Absolutely.
Developing that foundation. And our conversation today is going to branch just a little bit further out into that 5 to 7 year old category of the early elementary space. And we just want to discuss what it's going to take to make sure that they're getting what they need. So if we could start with what should we expect from our 5 to 7 year olds when it comes to homeschooling them? What should we expect from them?
So a lot of that is going to be based on what you did in those 1 to 4 years, right? So if you read a lot during those 1 to 4 years, you can expect a kid who is ready to start to work on reading. If you did not read a lot and they ended up having a little bit more screen time, then they're going to want that to continue, right? Now, there are ways that you can work around because there are some great online programs for reading, such as Reading Eggs, Starfall, to name a few that I absolutely love. But none of that replaces just a good book. Just a good book, right? At that 5 to 7 years, honestly, you just want to cultivate a love of reading. If you taught nothing else, you could teach them to read and how to do math, and everything else would come later. Seriously, everything else would come. You don't need to like overload your plate with, but we have to get in our, this history and this science and this, language arts and this. No, honestly, if you wanted to just pare down and do the basics, start with reading and math.
What about those families who are now finding themselves in a position due to COVID-19? And we see that Orleans and the other school districts are now pushing their start date back, and they're starting as far as in-person learning. What do we say to those families who are now homeschooling their 5 to 7 year olds, but they're doing it based on what the school is requiring? Then how should we approach it at that point?
So I do want to make a distinction between the two. So these parents are participating in a virtual school, right?
Yes.
So with the virtual program that the schools are offering, they are setting more strict schedules for those kids. So, and I actually looked at one of the schedules, and it had them online for about 3 hours in different intervals. So it said, okay, so you want to start online and do this, and then you're going to go take a break and get some activity in, and then you might do an art project, and then you come online again, and then you take a break and you have lunch. So I do feel like the schools that are, and I think that they all are, like putting a lot of thought into not having your 5 to 7 year olds in front of a computer screen 8 hours a day, right? So in those cases, again, I would certainly be following along with what the school has recommended as far as this is when you come to class, this is when you have a little break. And they ended up filling that day for that, I think they start at like 8:30 or 9 in the morning and go until maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose for that, I think it's kind of multifaceted, right? So it really is to meet the needs of parents who are looking for structure for their kids to be able to do all day. Whereas we've talked before about how as a homeschooler, like you create that yourself, right?
Yeah.
So there's a way to do that. The school is actually trying to, I think, help people by providing all of that for them, right?
Absolutely.
And outside of that, so even at 2 or 3, when your child is finished, I say grab a book. Grab some books, find books that your kids are interested in. So if they like dinosaurs, if they like Fancy Nancy, if they want to read about mathematicians or Dr. King, it doesn't matter. Find some books and really work on reading. And the more that they see you read, the more that they will also read, right?
Yes.
So maybe after dinner, have a half an hour or an hour where you turn off all screens and everybody grabs a book and spend some time reading to work on cultivating this love of reading.
Yeah, and I'm glad you made that distinction because we are definitely working with homeschooling, and we use the term interchangeably at this time when everybody's kind of, they're doing this thing at home. So I'm so glad that you made that distinction, that there are some parents, there are some families that are going to be doing the virtual, the distance learning, guided by a school district, guided by a curriculum. And we also have the families who are maybe deciding for the first time that I am going to pull away from the school district and I'm going to do this thing on my own. So, but what I hear in both scenarios is the importance of not only reading, which is something that I am absolutely excited about, right? Because it is so critical to develop that love of learning, that love of reading, and reading takes you to places that you may never get to go, and need that. But I'm also hearing the importance of structure and scheduling. Importance, even if your child's school day normally starts at 7:15, even if you say, okay, we're going to start a little bit later, 8:30, the key is to have a set time. And we talked about that with our 1 to 4-year-olds, to have time when our kids are starting their day. I'll talk just real quickly, and then we're going to jump right back in about a family. And we're getting calls every day from families who are saying, I need help. What are you all providing as far as programming? Will you provide any kind of support for parents so we can figure out how we can help during the school year? And absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I said to a parent just this morning, I said, we're preparing. This particular student is going to go back to school on the 24th of next month and do virtual learning in Texas. But we here are going to provide support to that parent. And I said, what time is she going to bed? And I won't even say the ungodly hour that this baby is going to bed. But I said, so here's what needs to start happening. Let's start here. We need to start dialing that back, right? If this, Lord, it was 3:00 in the morning. I almost passed out. It's 3 in the morning time. Now this baby is going to 4th grade, so she's not, she's 3 in the morning during the summer. Okay. Now, so for me, but this is the reality, Ty. Unfortunately, in many homes, are just they kind of allow the kids to kind of make their own schedules during the summer, and that's understandable. But I said, she's going to be back in school in less than a month. Let's start dialing that back. Now I said, we can't, maybe, you have to decide in your home, can I shock her and say, okay, now you've been going to bed at 3, but now you got to go to bed at 8. Should I shock her or should I just kind of pull back? And I said, so if it was 3 last night, it's got to be 2:30 tonight. Then it's got to be 2:00 tomorrow night. And then it's got to be 1. So we've got to start dialing that back. And then we're going to come back on the front end. And I said, what time is she getting up in the morning? 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. So here we go. We got to dial that back. We start waking her up earlier. And that means, Mom, that you've got to get up too. right? We've got
Absolutely.
schedule. So with that being said, we have a lot of parents that are they want to help their kids. They want to make sure that their kids are getting what they need, but they just need a little bit of guidance, figuring out what that looks like. So the love of reading, the structure, what else should we be focused on when it comes to our 5 to 7 year olds homeschooling or distance learning via the school district?
So either one of those, again, I am huge on learning through play, through whether it's pretend play, whether it's playing games, whether it's, I mean, there's so many lessons, so many just things that they can end up practicing when they're playing games. I was sharing with a family, so if you have a child who is struggling with subtraction, play Uno. Give everybody 500 points and let them be the scorekeeper, right? So they're not thinking about the fact that they are subtracting every time somebody at the end of a round, right? They're thinking about the fun they're having playing the game. Monopoly, oh my gosh. I remember we had this one Monopoly, I think it was called Monopoly You Build, where the sums were in like the millions, right? So I would hear the kids and they're like, well, this was $7 million and, I only have, 3.5 million. So can we, and so they are calculating this in their head. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So again, find games. We love games in our house, but I must admit, y'all, I look for educational games because my thought was, I want you to play, but while you're playing, mama's not mad if you're learning something, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
every game that we ended up buying, and that would be Christmas lists, right? So people say, oh, but like the budget's tight, I don't have money to buy this. Christmas and birthday comes around, right? So
Yes.
grandpa, aunts and uncles, hey, here's our wish list of games that we would like to incorporate in our family. And whether you're having, you're playing games multiple days a week or just having a game night once a week where you're just getting in there, digging in and playing games and reinforcing all of these concepts that they were learning through gameplay. The other thing I would say is have posters up, like the poster behind me, right, that has money and pictures, and talk about a different aspect of that at different times. So while you're eating, you can have this poster up and start talking about things from the poster about money, right? When teaching math concepts to littles, I say relate everything to food or money because they will get it. When you start to introduce fractions and you're like, which is bigger, a fourth or an eighth? Thinking, now I know that 8 is a bigger number, right? So maybe it's an eighth. If you had a pizza and you said, okay, so do you want a fourth of a slice or an eighth of a slice, right? They make that mistake one time saying an eighth. And they say that and done. It is solidified in their mind. They will never forget having that sliver of pizza.
Versus a nice, healthy slice.
Right?
Yes. Yes. So with and that's so important as well, is to structure your day so that you are paying attention to what's around you and making things relevant, which is what you're saying is make things relevant. What about spacing? What about setting up the environment? What should the environment look like for a 5 to 7 year old who is now learning at home?
So, and I will say that really, honestly, Ari, that depends on your budget. It depends on the size of your house, right? I have some friends and family who end up having a dedicated room and they set it up to look like a classroom. And that is great for some kids. For some kids, they're overwhelmed by that amount of stimulus, right? So you need to pay attention to the needs of your kids. And if you see that your kid starts to shut down or is easily distracted, well, you don't want to have a whole lot of things hanging on the wall, right? It doesn't mean that at the dinner table, you can't have a placemat, right? You could do, strategic placemats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to where you have the math one on at breakfast and your word search on at lunch and geography on at dinner. And it's a great way to say, hey, can you find South Africa? I found California, right? While you're having dinner in a way that's not overwhelming and overstimulating to your child.
There's a common thread that I'm hearing in our classroom conversations, Ty, and that common thread is intentionality, right? It doesn't, and what I'm hearing you say in every conversation is not, it's not about how much money we spend or how, and or the amount of stuff, right? Because we can keep it simple, but the key is to be intentional. So to say that I'm going to get a list together and we're going to let our family and friends know that for this birthday, these are the games that is intentional. That is, it's not a haphazard, let's just kind of see what happens attitude. I'm hearing you say it's not about quantity, but it is about the quality and making learning intentional. And that's what I'm hearing with the placemats and saying, okay, paying attention. If my child is overwhelmed by all of the stuff, then I've got to declutter. I've got to minimize the stimulus, you know, the things that are stimulating and distracting my child. How important is it, as we wrap up this conversation, like we like to keep it short and sweet, let's talk a little bit about the social aspect. Mm-hmm. For our 5 to 7 year olds, what should that look like at this point now that kids are actually learning in their homes?
So, and again, this is going to go back to your comfort level and amidst COVID, right? That it's completely different. Before, like pre-COVID, I would have said, yes, this is where you start to introduce your kids to different activities, whether it's, you know, sports and art and dance, to figure out where their interests lie. So some of that can actually come from the books. Let's bring it back to the books, where you get books on different activities, and while you're reading this book and discussing it and saying, so in this book they played baseball. What do you think about that? Do you think you might want to try baseball, right? But now clearly, you know, amidst this, you know, the time that we're in right now, if there are a family or two that, you know, you all are planning to get together to do activities together, you're kind of walking the same walk as far as precautions are concerned, so you feel comfortable with your kids playing with them, then definitely, like, by all means, find ways to get out to the park and run. They have energy. They have more energy than, right? I mean, Ari, it's like, we want that energy. We want to just run for no reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, go from here to the other room and you just run because so much energy.
For no reason.
Right? So again, so you do need to look for outlets for them to be able to get that out. And whether that's, you know, exercising, going for a bike ride or a run, or jumping on a trampoline in the morning before you start school, especially if you have a really active, let them do that. If they need to, you know, in between lessons that they're doing, do some jumping jacks and run it out, or do like a 5-minute wiggle it out, and do that. And don't expect them to act like many adults, right? Yes. Certainly something that sometimes we're like, well, just sit down. Like, why can't you just sit down? Well, no, they just have so much energy. And the thing is, I think, like with an active child, if their brain is focused on sitting down, like, okay, I need to sit, I need to stop wiggling, I need to stop, right? They're not learning because they're focused on trying to control their body. Let them jump and run and do something while you're reading that book. It's okay. Like, if they to, you know, practice their somersault while you were reading a book to them, it's okay. Like, they're actually probably paying more attention to you while they are, you know, flipping and twisting and turning than they are if they have to sit there and focus on, like, sitting down like that the entire time.
Yeah, and I found with those kids, with those kids who need that outlet, there are some kids they're not, they can sit in their room and they can be, but those kids who have that excessive energy, they are the ones who are tapping on the desks. They're the ones that are patting their hands and they're constantly moving. And I have some students that'll just stand up to do their work. And that is okay.
Okay.
Because physiologically, they need to be able to move. They need to, and it may not be a somersault, it may just be a tapping of the leg or a tapping of the finger, snapping of the fingers. So that is critical to know your child and to know what it takes to make sure that at the end of the day, your child is learning. Is the information getting through, and are they retaining the information and able to use it, make it useful? So those are some really good tips, Ty. Where can those families that are hearing us, whether it's YouTube, whether it's on your site, where can they find you, get more information about NOLA Homeschoolers?
Absolutely. So you can come to our website, NOLA Homeschoolers with an S.com, or you can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page that we just push information out on, and we have a private Facebook group for those local families who are looking to meet up with other families or participate in activities or go on field trips. So definitely find us there. One thing I did want to wrap up with, Ari, when you talked about the students who are fidgeting a lot, you know, there are some great tools and resources that you can even purchase for home. A yoga ball is an excellent opportunity for kids who need to, right? It allows them to wiggle and fidget without, you know, bothering mom or dad too much.
Yeah.
They have, like, you know, these stretchy bands that you can put on the legs of the chairs that allow them to go through and kind of move kind of shake their leg. That's in a quieter, kind of less obvious way to other people. So I would certainly, you know, look for little helps like that would allow your child to fidget when they need to without it causing too much distraction for other people, and or honestly, like having their parents reprimand them all the time for moving around too much, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ty. And anyone else who, if you missed anything that Ty said, just head to teachyourkid.com, and this will be on there, and any other resources you need, you can get to Ty. If you missed NOLA Homeschoolers, you can get to Ty through teachyouronkid.com. Thank you so much, Ty, for joining me again today for a classroom conversation. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. I look forward to the next one.